Hey guys, welcome back to Wentworth Life and welcome to the start of the Wentworth Season 5 reviews. As some of you will know, I have gone back to the very first episode of Wentworth to do reviews for every single episode, mainly due to the fact that I didn't start this channel until the very end of Season 5 going into Season 6. So, let's begin. Wentworth Season 5 Episode 1, titled Scars, and boy, is this an emotional, jam-packed opening episode. At the very end of Season 4, Bea Smith was killed after a confrontation with Joan Ferguson. Bea had sacrificed herself in order for Joan to remain in Wentworth as a prisoner, and for Bea to be with Ali in the spirit world, because we all thought that Ali was never going to wake up because, it's what the doctors said. Shockingly though, at the very tail end of the last episode, Bea passes away and then Ali opens up her eyes and those two seahorses in the sky disappear, which literally breaks my heart every time I see it. We then have this really sad but beautiful montage of this immediate aftermath where we see Will come into the unit and the H1 girls breaking down crying. We pan to different characters throughout and seeing their reactions. Frankie goes to the hospital and tells Ali the sad news, and the women all have this beautiful memorial for Bea, while Frankie, Will and Vera, they're all over at Bea's funeral on the outside, and the song that they play in the background during all of this montage is just so beautiful. I have only ever heard it played once in real life, and it was when me and Peter were in one of our local pubs one afternoon have a cheeky little cocktail, and the song came on in the bar, and straight away I recognized it, and I pointed it out to Pete, and even he was like, oh yes, I remember this, and the feels that the song gave me, because I really wasn't expecting to hear it, and yeah, it's just beautiful. I said it in the last review, but I'm gonna say it once again, rest in peace, Bea Smith. Now, this episode deals with the aftermath. Joan Ferguson is not happy being in this position. Joan knows that she is in some serious shit. Vera is terrified because she thinks that she's going to lose her job and she needs to somehow explain to the big bosses upstairs how Bea Smith managed to get out into no man's land. And, of course, Ali and the women of Wentworth want revenge on Joan Ferguson. Joan is determined to go back into general and uses the same argument that she was using in the last season, something about human rights and all of that nonsense, but she also points out to Vera that she doesn't think any of the women will try anything on her through fear of having the same fate as Bea Smith. Oh, what a bitch. Kaz Proctor is now the top dog, and there's this scene in the laundry where Joan walks in and she even rolls up her sleeves and gets her hands ready for the steam press. But this is where Kaz delivers this speech saying that Ferguson is invisible, nobody speaks to her or even acknowledges her, she is a ghost, and she goes on to tell all of the women that there is to be no retribution against any of the other women in the prison. Now, I can remember bursting out laughing when I first saw this scene. There is no way that Kaz is going to be able to stop violence in a prison, at least not without having to resort to violence. I mean, it just made no sense to me. It was all kind of, what a hypocrite, I still wasn't a Kaz fan at this stage of the show. My opinion won't change on Kaz for a couple of episodes yet. Anyway, Ali returns and all of the women are rallying around her, but later on, we are introduced to one of the biggest and violent fight scenes ever seen at Wentworth. I am talking about the big fight in the yard with Joan and the women. So Ali, she tries to hit Joan with a snooker ball in a sock, I think it is, but Joan just ends up throwing Ali across the yard like a rag doll. Ali then, has another go and grabs Joan from behind and starts pulling her hair. Joan then knocks her back down to the ground, and then a load of the other women, like the background characters, they all join in, and Joan, she does end up receiving a fantastic punch punch to the face, and we get that, the blood flying out of her mouth in the slow motion Wentworth style. It's a crazy scene. Joan literally annihilates around 4 or 5, maybe even 6 prisoners if my memory serves me right, and even snaps one of their arms while they're on the ground. The moment then where Joan picks Ali up off the ground and then headbutts her, I mean, wow, that growling sound that Joan is making, she's like I thought I was watching Joan turn into a werewolf for a moment, but I think to top it all off is the moment where Joan ends up running around the yard shouting, "Who's next?" like a demented gorilla. Is just one hell of a funny scene, but it's also like epic, mesmerizing when you're watching it, like wow. But what this scene does demonstrate is that Joan is more than dangerous now than season 4. She now doesn't have very much left to lose, and this whole big fight in the yard demonstrates to the other women just how strong she is, and she is not afraid to fight. She is one strong bitch. Now that Joan has the women under control, at least for now, Joan continues to work with Jake Stewart, the little snake, making sure that he keeps close with Vera and making sure that he fills her in about anything that Vera says or does. Meanwhile, Vera is shitting herself because she needs to try and find a way to explain how Bea got out into no man's land. Now, it's obvious to the powers that be that a staff member must have helped her and let her out. You remember this officer from season 4, Officer Murphy? She appeared in like 1 or 2 episodes. Well, she pops back in during this episode, and Murphy ends up being the scapegoat and is set up by Vera with a little bit of persuasion from Jake Stewart. Vera makes it look as if Murphy has let Bea out into no man's land using her card, and she ends up having to resign and take the blame, even though she knows that she did not do it. But this is in order to stop herself from facing criminal charges. Now, I always remember thinking in my mind that this is going to be a pivotal moment, a moment that I always reckoned would eventually come back and bite Vera on the ass eventually, which of course it does, but that's not until season 6. Something that I was devastated about in this episode is the fact that Maxine, oh no, she's being transferred to a prison farm to help her during her recovery. Now, she doesn't leave in this particular episode, but it is like revealed and discussed, and Boomer is upset and she loses her shit, and I'm upset and I want to lose my shit. I was really gutted at the way Maxine's character was just rushly written out of the show. I know, at the very start of season 5, I think losing Bea Smith was bad enough, but then to lose Maxine so soon after, it always annoys me. Frankie is in for one hell of a ride in this episode when she ends up bumping into Mike Panisi. Now, Mike Panisi is the guy that she burnt all of those years ago on that reality TV cooking show that she was on, and that is how she ended up in prison in the first place. Now, Mike, he's got all of this really bad skin damage on the side of his face, and it's clear that Frankie's actions has changed his life forever. Frankie initially tells him that she can't talk to him because it's a violation of her parole, but she does end up having a coffee with him to apologize for what she's done, which she will totally end up regretting because Mike Panisi, he ends up starting to stalk Frankie. He keeps ringing her, wanting to meet her. He then leaves some photos that he's taken of her younger sister on her car window. But the freakiest moment of all is that Mike Panisi has a Frankie doll, like a life-size doll, in his house. You heard that right. He sits there with his Frankie doll at his dinner table and has dinner with it. Now, I remember when I first saw the Frankie doll, my mouth dropped very wide open, and I was really concerned for Frankie's safety and welfare. And I was totally right to be concerned, because later on, when she ends up going over to his house to try and talk things out with him and try and sort things out, he ends up jumping in her car with a blowtorch and tries to burn her face. Wow. I mean, luckily Frankie manages to kick him out of the car and drive away, but that scene is literally like something out of a horror film. Now, what Frankie originally did to Mike Panisi is awful, it's terrible, and I suppose I could somehow understand him wanting to take some revenge, but remember guys, two wrongs do not make a right. Everything comes to a head at the very end of the episode when the police turn up for Frankie while she's at work and she is arrested for the murder of Mike Panisi. Murder? The last I saw him, he was being thrown out of a car and he was okay. When did that happen? I knew Frankie hadn't murdered him. I think at the time of this first airing and me first watching, I think I had the idea that maybe Mike had somehow orchestrated his own death. Maybe he killed himself and made it look like that Frankie had done it as a last resort type of thing. I mean, we all know what really happens, but this is just what I was thinking at the time. So Frankie is headed straight back to Wentworth, and I think a lot of us at the time had predicted this after Bea had left the show. I mean, to lose such a massive character, we needed somebody to come back in just to fill the gap for now. But this is a solid opening episode, lots going on, and it's definitely one of my favourite opening episodes of the series. My absolute favourite moment of the whole episode is definitely that massive fight scene in the yard. It's absolutely epic, and it's literally one of the biggest fight scenes in the whole show. My least favourite moment is probably going to be that speech that CRAIGz gives in the laundry about there being no violence. I found it really stupid, and if the writers wanted the audience to like CRAIGz as the new top dog after Bea had left the show, then they weren't doing a very good job, at least not for the moment. But that's enough of me. I want to hear all of your thoughts, and I want to know what you guys thought of that epic, massive fight scene. Let me know everything, guys, in the comments box below. Okay then, guys, thank you all for watching today's video. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, stay safe out there, and I will see you all again very soon.